up, everyone? It's me, Steph, the alternate, the alternative. And yes, I am here taking over from Andy as Master of Ceremonies for today. He's on holiday at the moment. However, though, I am joined by Mr. Christopher Melcher, and we are going to be discussing today's topic, which is, when I can get my backside into gear, guys, Johnny Depp has won, Amber Heard has admitted defeat, but can she keep lying? Welcome, Christopher Melcher. Thank you so much for joining today. How are you doing, mate?
Well, I'm doing good. Sorry for the sunglasses. These are actually medical sunglasses, so I'm not trying to be cool. I had some surgery under my eye, and it's fine. But this, I promise you, looks better than what's underneath, and so I'm just letting that go while it heals. So apologize for the look.
It's not as bad as he's saying, guys. Don't worry about it. But wishing you a speedy recovery, mate. In the meantime, oh my goodness, this was, for me, a shock. I never thought I'd see it. So she's actually settled. I really thought that she was going to go over all the way with this, but she has settled with Johnny Depp for $1 million, which, as luck would have it, is the same amount that she's actually insured for by the insurance company. Now, we were talking about this just before we went live, but just to get to it now, my kind of understanding at the time was, well, how can £1 million pay out when the insurance company was in direct kind of conflict with her, saying we ain't paying out because you willfully defamed, therefore bye-bye, you're not getting the money from us. Do you feel at this stage she probably has come to a settlement with them and they are going to pay out?
Absolutely. So she had litigation going on with New York Marine, one of her insurance companies, and Travelers, the main insurance company, had been providing her a defense. And New York Marine was this secondary insurance, and they were all fighting with each other over whether there was an obligation by New York Marine to kick in costs of defense. So this is a smart move for the insurance companies because they were going to pay $1 million, whatever the outcome of this, in attorney's fees. So these insurance companies under California law have a duty to defend their insured. So they had a duty to defend Amber Heard against claims of defamation, which means that they paid millions of dollars, at least Travelers, many, many millions of dollars for her legal team. And then if there is a verdict against her, they have a duty to indemnify, but only if it's a covered loss. So there was a question of whether or not that would have to be paid. That $1 million of indemnification insurance had to be paid because she acted with what's called actual malice. And there's a question whether that was intentional conduct that would keep her from having coverage. While all those issues are being fought out in court between the insurance companies, they're paying lawyers. And so who knows how it's going to turn out. And so they were on the hook for lots of attorney's fees. So it's easy for them just to write a check for $1 million to Johnny Depp because they're going to be out that money anyway. And it buys them and Amber certainty because now they know the outcome. It's like $1 million and that's the end of it.
Okay. So looking at her statement to begin with, when you read through it, I suppose, what were your reactions and your overall thoughts with what she was saying? Do you think she kind of like grasped reality at that stage?
Well, she's not admitting any fault and neither is Johnny admitting any fault for the verdict that was rendered against him for $2 million for the Adam Waldman statement. So each side, continues with their narrative. So despite the fact that there's an agreement, each is still holding on, to what they believe their truth is. So I don't expect Amber Heard to say like, yes, I did all these horrible things. I'm an awful person. She's not saying that. She made a deal, and I am happy for both of them. That's smart to make an agreement. If we go back in time to 2016, they also made an agreement to resolve their divorce. And we should have never been here. There should have never been all of this other subsequent activity between the two of them, because they made a deal then. And now here it is 6 years later, they're making another deal. So hopefully this is the last of it, and they'll leave each other alone, and that'll be it, and they move forward, because this has been super destructive for both of them. Amber has, I see these as self-inflicted wounds that she's done by making these false statements about Johnny Depp in the op-ed piece and not backing down and kind of reconciling with all this. So she brought this onto herself, but she's also paid a tremendous price for it. She's lost her career. She doesn't have any money. She was even living in Spain, the last that we heard. And so she's paid a tremendous price. Johnny has decided to resolve this with her. And he's clearly moved on with his life. He's not letting this define him. He's cleared his name. That was his objective. Yes, there's his $1 million, but he is pledged, if you saw the statement, pledged that to charity, but he also backed it up, or his attorney said, well, actually contributed the pledge too. So, look, he's moved on. He's found peace with this. And so that's a very nice outcome, I think, for both of them.
Yeah, and we can see it here, the statement from Ben Chu and Camille Vasquez saying, we're pleased to formally close the door on this painful chapter for Mr. Depp, who made clear throughout this process that his priority was about bringing the truth to light. The jury's unanimous decision and the resulting judgment in Mr. Depp's favour against Ms. Heard remain fully in place. I think that's very important to note. The payment of $1 million, which Mr. Depp is pledging and will donate to charities, pledging and donate there, reinforces Ms. Heard's acknowledgement the conclusion of the legal system's rigorous pursuit for justice. One thing that I kind of noticed a lot of when I compare the two statements, and I'm kind of tempted of doing a little bit of a video tomorrow for a little bit of linguistic analysis here. But when I look at the statement on behalf of Mr. Depp, it's literally called Mr. Depp there, Johnny Depp from Ben and Camille, it's all about, donating, pledging towards the charities, bringing the truth to light. It's done, game over. And it's all about the freedom and making sure that they're doing right by the charities. Whereas with Amber, when you read through it, it's very self-involved. It's all about me, I. Very much, I don't know, narcissistic. Whereas, Johnny Depp's statement from his lawyers, less so, which I thought was very interesting, just as a quick comparison there. But speaking of Johnny, when it comes down to it, my main takeaway for him is he's got his freedom. I think, regardless of whether you think he should have got the full 10 million or not, whether he should have really bled Amber Heard dry and really made her pay, at the end of the day, for him, it would have been a long, arduous process to try and get to that point. And I don't think really it's kind of phrase you can get blood out of a stone, really, at the end of the day. So I think really it was, in my opinion, not legally, of course, but probably the best decision he made with this whole appeal process, just to settle and just to get out and be free and be done with it. I suppose in your perspective, Chris, you did mention that he did actually potentially have a case where he could have won his side of the appeal. Do you think he should have gone ahead with that, or do you think he did the right thing to settle?
He absolutely did the right thing to settle, because he cleared his name, but there was a tremendous cost associated with that. He had to sit there in that Virginia courtroom and bare his soul. And I learned a lot about him. I didn't understand that whole background that he had of abusive childhood. So it was, kind of interesting and really made me, understand what he went through, and explained a lot of his behavior in adulthood. But why? And it's so horrible that those are very private things that he had to relate. And, he's an actor, he's an artist. I'm sure he wants to be defined and known for that and not have to sit there and talk about a failed marriage and all these super personal things, on TV in a courtroom and be cross-examined about them. So he cleared his name, but he had to go through that. And while the appeal was going on, there's just keep on drudging all this up. And the headlines are about Johnny and Amber's court case rather than Johnny's project or Johnny's music. So this is why with celebs, when we're dealing with any of these court cases, it's toxic to their brand. I mean, they want to be in control of the narrative, hate that, but they want to be in control of their messaging and their branding, and they want to be known for what they want to be known for. But when you're in litigation, you become known for the case. So this was absolutely the best decision for him and for her. And there was also risk for him legally because he's paying attorney's fees. Maybe he's got some insurance covering that himself. But he's also got that $2 million judgment against him and that she could have potentially collected, and he'd have to try and offset somehow. So this was very nice, end of the chapter, so that now, again, and he's clearly moved on. I mean, he's not bearing this victim mentality that Amber is. And I don't know in her statement what she could have really done at this point other than just confessing, I guess, to whatever happened, because she's all in on her story. This is what she says happened to her, and what is she supposed to do at this point? It's very unfortunate that she's put herself into that corner where there's nothing she can really say other than repeat what her claims and potentially, now just endlessly being defined by this whole mess, or just acknowledging like she lied. There's no real middle ground on that one.
Now, when we go back to her statement, the one thing that kind of really disturbs me is this notion of, I'm not going to be gagged. I'm going to still speak the truth as you read through it. So to my mind, if she continues to make the same claims about Johnny Depp verbatim or pretty much there in terms of what she wrote in the Washington Post, does she run the risk of Johnny suing her again for the same thing?
Yeah, it's so that verdict, I mean, I haven't seen the settlement documents, so I don't know that they have, or could even under Virginia law do anything to set aside the jury's findings of defamation. And so I would imagine that verdict stands. But again, and I saw some different views on Twitter about that, but, I'd want to lay eyes on the settlement agreement and not make assumptions. But assuming that they haven't somehow undone the verdict, she has a finding against her that those statements that she made in the 2018 op-ed were false and defamatory and done with actual malice. And so if she were to repeat those statements, she could be sued again for republication of those. So I got to imagine she understands that very well at this point and would find a way to kind of talk about the case, which she can do. I think that's a safe zone. She can talk about the case. She can talk about what her experiences were. She can say, like you say, I'm not going to be muzzled again. These are vague enough statements where she's not going to be sued for it. But, whether Johnny would have the appetite to go back and sue her again, I mean, obviously it's going to depend on what she has to say. But there's two camps out here. There's the ones that believe her, and then there are ones that believe him. And I don't think anything that she says will change that.
Okay. And she mentions in her kind of statement, and this I think is laughable, and I'll explain why. For too many years, I've been caged in an arduous and expensive legal process, which has shown itself unable to protect me and my right to free speech. The thing is, firstly, it's not an expensive legal process for her, only because the insurers have actually covered it all. It's not actually come out of her own pocket. So she's, in my opinion, bending the truth right there. But then the second thing is her right to free speech. So this has been the main kind of central argument for her all along in regards to Washington Post. You can't sue me. I can't be found guilty because I have the right to free speech, blah, 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 blah. And there's so many people out there still that will see that argument and be like, well, yeah, fair enough. Why is Johnny going after her in the first place? So are you just able to explain, just in very pretty much simple terms, why in this case her right to free speech ended up her being guilty of defamation?
Well, so in the United States, there's a right to free speech, but that's not unlimited. And so we do not have the right to defame people, so making false statements about another. If there are a public figure like Johnny Depp is, there's a higher standard because of their fame, there is a public interest in talking about these individuals. So we have more latitude in exercising our right to speak about public figure. And that's why there's this requirement that we show actual malice, which is either that the speaker, Amber in this case, knew that the statements were false, or that she acted with a reckless disregard for whether the statement were true or false. And so, these statements that are false about Johnny Depp, made actually knowing that they were false or reckless disregard for the truth or falsity of the statements, are not an exercise of free speech. Those may lawfully be punished, as we saw happen in Virginia. So she's, like you say, that right there in her statement, she didn't pay anything for the attorneys. She paid a big cost in terms of her career and earning potential by making these false statements, for sure. But she was not caught exercising her free speech. She was caught defaming somebody else. So, like I say, clearly she is going to stick with her narrative. And that's really what she's saying in 2018 in her op-ed, is that she spoke out against a powerful man and bore the wrath of Hollywood, which was false. And so her statement, again, is false. But that's her perspective on things. She's entitled to have those. It's just that no one believes that listened to the trial and come down on Johnny's side.
Well, that's the thing, as you mentioned, that there's pretty much like a fine line between free speech, it looks like, in America, and then defamation. I remember you were saying, during the trial, it can be difficult in America to prove defamation because of the constitutional laws for the right to free speech. It's a little bit of like a uphill battle. I do remember that, unless I dreamt that. You said that at one stage.
Yeah, I mean, it's very difficult. I mean, this was a huge win for Johnny, not because he didn't deserve to win, but it's because the odds are stacked against him. I mean, he has to show that the statements were false and that and that were made about him, which he eventually admitted, because he's not named in the op-ed. And then finally, that she knew that they were false or acted recklessly when she made them. So that's very, very difficult to do. But obviously he did. And in my view, it was because of Amber's testimony. It was so incredible. But again, it's like she's in a very bad spot. And this is what I saw happening during the trial is again, she's all in, doubled down, tripled down on her statements. And where is she to go other than continuing to proclaim that this abuse happened to her, or to admit that she lied? There's no middle ground on that for her.
And going back to her statement, one of the things that grinds my gears on this is that she says, when I stood before a judge in the UK, I was vindicated by a robust, impartial and fair system, where I was protected from having to give the worst moments of my testimony in front of the world's media, and where the court found that I was subjected to home and intimate nastiness. Now, the bit that really grinds my gears there is that it wasn't that she was vindicated. That was the UK trial, if we remind everyone of this, where it was Johnny Depp versus the Sun versus Johnny Depp. That wasn't a Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard situation. I mean, legally, is there any way that she can actually lay claim to say that she was vindicated during that trial or not?
No, that's very, disappointing, I guess, as a lawyer, I would say that she would make a statement like that because when Johnny sued the Sun for the headline that they wrote about him relating to his relationship with Amber, Johnny wanted to get what they call in England disclosure, what we would call in the U.S. discovery. He wanted to take her statement under oath, compelled to force her to answer questions, just like she had to do in Virginia. Johnny also wanted to get the ACLU and Children's Hospital of L.A. to produce records to demonstrate whether she had actually donated this money that she pledged, all the $7 million in settlement funds that Johnny had paid to her in the divorce settlement, which she had claimed she had given away to charity. He wanted records to show that actually didn't happen. The English judge said, no, we're not going to allow that disclosure of Amber or the hospital or ACLU because they're not parties to the case. And here she's saying, I was vindicated, like as if she were a party to the case. So it's a completely inconsistent position that was taken in England. And by the way, the Virginia court said that they weren't going to allow any reference to the English judgment for these reasons. He did not have a fair trial in England. And when you read the English judge's long statement, he says that he credited Amber's testimony, that he believed Amber because she gave away $7 million to charity, and only a nice person, a good, honest person would do that. And so obviously that judge was suffering under the lie that Amber had told him in that testimony that she had given away the money. And Johnny was only able to uncover the lie in the Virginia case because he was able to get the records from the two charities. Well, at least the Children's Hospital, I'll call it, and ACLU. I don't really consider them a charity. So, hey, so the English court got it wrong because she lied to the English judge, and the English judge believed her. And then for her to come out in a statement and saying, oh, I love how that English case came out. Well, sure, if you lie to somebody and they don't understand they're being lied to, then they'll believe you.
And you kind of remind myself in terms of the divorce settlement, the $7 million that was supposed to go to charity. Now that this settlement for the defamation case is over and done with, we know factually she did not donate the full $7 million to charity. She pledged. So really at this stage, now that the settlement for the defamation lawsuit is done, can Johnny Depp enforce the divorce settlement and force her to pony up the remainder of the $7 million for the charities that was originally agreed to? Or is that it now as well? She's not going to do that. He can't force her.
No. So there was, and I'm hoping before we get to that one, that the $1 million that Johnny's going to get from these insurance companies, he's now said he's going to give to charity. He hasn't identified in his statement or his lawyer's statement what charity or charities that'll go to. I'm hoping it'll go to Children's Hospital of Los Angeles because they're a victim of what Amber has done as much as anybody. They were promised $3.5 million by Amber Heard, and they got a small amount of money, relatively speaking of that. And I'm sure they did planning around for that. And this is physicians and medical professionals taking care of sick and dying kids. And that money that they were promised and relied upon, they didn't get. So I'm hoping it goes there. In the settlement, as far as I can recall, when I read the judgment between Amber and Johnny in the settlement of the divorce case, I don't recall that there was a provision in there about her promising or being obligated to give the money to charity. I think she got that $7 million and then had stated, I have to go back and look at that actually. It's been too long. what to recall whether that was in that judgment or not. So I don't want to misspeak. But like I say, could the charity sue and do all this kind of stuff? You know, who knows? But it seems to me the end of the saga.
Okay. Well, you put up a good point, actually. Could the charity sue her? She pledged it. She said that she was going to donate. She was on the big, what is it called? Like the donors list, the big, huge donors list at one point for UCLA. So could the charities actually go after her and sue her for the money that she pledged?
So a promise to make a gift is typically not enforceable. Lacks what we call consideration. So typically you can't enforce a promise to make a gift. There could be circumstances where, you know, it would then become a contract. But yeah, I don't know. You know, like I say, ACLU is certainly aligned with her. And so I don't see them, you know, making any noise about that. Children's Hospital, my guess is probably have too much dignity to do something like that, and just saying like, you know, wow, they're grateful for people to donate money to them. And, you know, but they're not in the business of like suing people to collect on it, would be my suspicion.
Not even for a total of a circa $7 million.
Well, she didn't have, you know,
True.
7 million. She didn't have that. Probably at any point in her life, you know, other than the settlement that she got from Johnny. So she doesn't have any money, or at least that kind of money.
Fair enough. Well, guys, stay exactly where you are because the live stream is still going to continue. I'm going to cut it right here. Just to be a professional-ish YouTuber of the world. If you loved this video on Popcorn Planet, firstly, make sure, if you haven't done so already, subscribe. Hit that notification bell, turn it to all. Like this video as well, just for Christopher Melcher's awesome sunglasses. And comment down below what do you think to what's being discussed. Also as well, consider joining today and become a Popcorn Planeteer for as little as $5.99 a month. And you get exclusive videos and access to Andy Signore himself. Also as well, if you want to see more of Christopher Melcher, you can follow him on Twitter at CADivorce. And also as well, if you want more of me and what comes out of my gob, then hurry on over to my channel, Steph the Alternerd. Gobbiness on the daily, sassiness, all that jazz. You know the drill. Please subscribe, help us to get to 100k and all that jazz. With that being said though, Chris, thank you so much for joining. Everyone, stay exactly where you are. Like I said, I'm just going to clip it here. But for everyone else watching on the replay, here's some videos you might enjoy. Click on them, because you know you want to.
See ya.